Good morning, and welcome to you, stalwart few who uh, navigated the change in date and time this weekend. I appreciate your being here. So, we started talking about the Vimalakirti Sutra last week, and didn't really mention Vimalakirti, not really mentioned in the first chapter. First chapter had to do with the Buddha and his appearance at Vaishali to meet with a large group of people. The audience, which included 32,000 bodhisattvas of impeccable morality, wisdom, and meditative skill, along with a number of other creatures, along with a number of other beings, dragons, spirits, yakshas, Gandharvas, asuras, Garudas, Kimnaras, Mahoragas, and others all came to seat at the assembly. So uh, I think we're signaled right away that this is not a historical document. This is I would call it a religious text. It's a text that is written for our benefit, to help us grow, to help us see things differently. And the Buddha is the sort of the producer director of this story, of this drama. And Vimalakirti is going to be the main character. So, who was Vimalakirti? Well, we don't know that there was a Vimalakirti. It may be historical figure, maybe not, maybe legendary. Was there really a Robin Hood? We don't know. But this story is about, um, this narrative is about Vimalakirti and his interactions with other people who are from the assembly that has been described. And the setting for this, Vaishali was a large trading center in northern India at the time, accommodating a growing mercantile class. India was going from a almost exclusively agrarian economy to a mercantile economy. And Vimalakirti represents a merchant who gained wealth by buying and selling. And we are still in this sort of mercantile economy. So I think this is quite relevant to us, the story of Vimalakirti. Vimalakirti, the name means stainless reputation. And there's a description at the beginning of the chapter about Vimalakirti that sort of tells it all. At that time, in the great city of Vaishali, there was a rich man named Vimalakirti. Already in the past, he had offered alms to immeasurable numbers of Buddhas, had deeply planted the roots of goodness, had grasped the truth of birthlessness. Unhindered in his eloquence, able to disport himself with transcendental powers, he commanded full retention of the teachings and had attained the state of fearlessness. Thank you, Carol. Desiring to save others, he employed the excellent expedients of residing in Vaishali. His immeasurable riches he used to relieve the poor. His faultless observation of the precepts served as a reproach to those who violated prohibitions. Through his restraint and forbearance, he warned others against rage and anger, and his great assiduousness discouraged all thought of sloth and indolence. Concentrating his single mind in quiet meditation, he suppressed disordered thoughts, though through firm and unwavering wisdom, he overcame all that was wise. Now, that description, as some of you may notice, is basically taken from a list of the virtues, the paramitas of a bodhisattva, those being dana, generosity, sila, morality, kshanti, patience or forbearance, virya, which is effort, diligence, jhana, meditative reflection, and prajna, wisdom. So he had mastered all of these virtues and had a stainless reputation. I think in part, this sutra was valuable and remains valuable because it represents a transition in Buddhism from a more or less exclusively monastic tradition to a generalizable lay tradition, so that the monastic tradition can continue, but it expands into a lay population. Of course, the monastics were dependent upon lay people, and it was important if a religious tradition is going to survive, it really has to go beyond a monastic tradition. There have been a number, like in the 19th century, there were religious communities in the United States that were sworn to celibacy, and of course they died out. So involvement of the laity is important. And Vimalakirti sort of represents a model lay person. Another reason that Vimalakirti is important is that he could move freely in places where monastics really couldn't go because it would compromise perhaps their virtue to do so. So another section says, if he visited the gambling parlors, talking about Vimalakirti, it was solely to bring enlightenment to those there. He frequented the busy crossroads in order to bring benefit to others, entering the government offices and courts of law so as to aid and rescue all of those he could. He visited the places of debate in order to guide others to the great vehicle, the teachings, visited the schools and study halls to further the instruction of the pupils. He entered houses of ill fame, ill repute, to teach the folly of fleshly pleasure and desire, entered wine shops in order to encourage those with a will to quit them. So he could go places that the monastic followers of the Buddha could not be seen, and could do so with the intention of bringing benefit, long-term benefit, to those who were there. So Vimalakirti then serves as a model for lay practitioners. As a lay teacher, he serves as a model. He's kind of a superhero in a way. Not the kind of superhero that we might see on the screen if we go to a movie and see the previews of Supergirl or whatever, and not the kind of superhero who achieves power by strength and violence, but a superhero who achieves his ends, which are the benefit of himself and others, by wisdom and eloquence. And as we'll see as we go along, Vimalakirti is extremely eloquent. In this way, the rich man Vimalakirti employed immeasurable numbers of expedient means in order to bring benefits to others. Expedient means very, very key term, upaya, very key term in Mahayana Buddhism, that sort of helps resolve a number of quandaries in the doctrinal teachings. But in any case, he employs expedient means, and it tells a little bit about how he does this. Using these expedient means, he made it appear that his body had fallen prey to illness. Because of his illness, the king of the country, the great ministers, rich men, lay believers, Brahmins, as well as princes and lesser officials, numbering countless thousands, all went to see him and inquire about his illness. So, as is mentioned, Vimalakirti means stainless reputation, and it is mentioned in other sections of this chapter how honored he is by all the people. He's honored by the wealthy and the poor, because he's generous and has achieved great wealth. He's honored by the high and the low. Everybody seems to be fond of Vimalakirti. So when he's on his sickbed, it attracts the attention of large numbers of people, including the wealthy and powerful. Vimalakirti then used this bodily illness to expound the Dharma to them in broad terms. And one of his first teachings is about the body. Good people, this body is impermanent, without durability, without strength, without firmness, a thing that decays in a moment, not to be relied on. It suffers and is tormented, a meeting place of manifold ills. Good people, no person of enlightened wisdom could depend on a thing like this body. This body is like a cluster of foam, nothing you can grasp or handle. This body is like a bubble that cannot continue for long. This body is like a flame, born of longing and desire. This body is like the plantain that has no firmness in its trunk. This body is like a phantom, the product of air and confusion. This body is like a dream, compounded of false and empty visions. This body is like a shadow appearing through karma. This body is like an echo tied to causes and conditions. This body is like a drifting cloud, changing and vanishing in an instant. This body is like lightning, barely lasting moment to moment. And he gets even more direct later. He says, this body, a thing like this, is irksome and hateful, and therefore you should seek the Buddha body, and goes on to talk about that. Well, I think uh, this practice of disparaging the body, disparaging the physical body, um, goes back to the very beginnings of Buddha's teachings. It's not new with the Vimalakirti Sutra. Um, and there are a number of exercises to try to amplify, in a sense, disgust for the body. And I wonder if times have changed in that emphasizing disgust for the body is really not what we most need right now. I think we're so overstimulated that we tend to more become numb to the body, dissociated from the body. Just estranged from the body. And perhaps cultivating disgust for the body is not the most timely practice now. In fact, becoming more intimate with the body is perhaps more helpful at this time. I was visiting yesterday, which is why we postponed the session, um, uh, with, among other people, my nephew in outside of Indianapolis is where he lives, and he has a number of health problems, among them diabetes. But he was tried on a GLP-1 agonist drug not long ago, a few months ago. And he lost weight, and his diabetes got better, and he required less insulin, and it was all very successful. But he noticed something that disturbed him greatly. And this doesn't apply to everyone on these drugs. I don't mean this is a single person who had this experience. It's not universal with these agents. But for him, it it caused just a total flattening of affect. And he noticed that, well, he lost his wife about a year ago. And he noticed that all the sadness went away. Yeah. But he also noticed that all the joy went away. He has a job that he enjoys, and he was just less animated in that job. He just couldn't really get into it, less engaged. And he found this effect so disturbing that he felt the need to talk to his clinician and get off the agent, which he did. Unfortunately, he regained a lot of weight, but he feels more like a human being now. He mentioned that he heard on the radio they were playing one of he and his wife's favorite songs, and he teared up, and he hadn't cried in months. So this body, well, at a very minimal level, it allows us to hear the Dharma. These ears allow us to hear the Dharma. These eyes allow us to read the Dharma and to observe the effects in the world that confirm the Dharma. These bodies allow us to be sensitive to what other people are feeling because we feel it ourselves. They allow us to be sensitive to what we're feeling so we can respond in some appropriate way if we can. So I think total disparagement of the body is probably not what we most need at this time. But perhaps overcoming some of the numbness that derives from the intense overstimulation that is part of this culture. But in Vimalakirti's case, the audience he was speaking to, he felt needed some discouragement of the pleasures of the body, and he did so very eloquently. And he goes on to say, perhaps you should seek the Buddha body. Why? Because the Buddha body is the Dharma body. It is born from immeasurable merits and wisdom. It is born from precepts, meditation, wisdom, emancipation, and the insight of emancipation. It is born from kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. It is born in the various paramitas and almsgiving, keeping the precepts, forbearance and gentleness, assiduousness, meditation, freedom, and samadhi. So he concludes the chapter, if good people, if you wish to gain the Buddha body and do away with the ills and afflictions of all living beings, then you must set your mind on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, unsurpassed, complete emancipation, freedom, enlightenment. So in that chapter, then, we're introduced to Vimalakirti, this layperson of impeccable reputation, who is using a device, feigning illness, in order to attract the attention of others so that he can teach the Dharma. And the remainder of the text goes through the various adventures that occur as a result of this device of Vimalakirti. It's not quite malingering. Malingering technically means feigning an illness for personal benefit, for, as we say, secondary gain, to try to achieve something for the ego. But in this case, Vimalakirti is feigning an illness for the benefit of others. And he comes across in this chapter, as you might say, a cross between James Bond and Mother Teresa. Um, fearless, fearless in his virtue, and totally dedicated to the benefit of others. I think we'll stop there. That's sort of the culmination of that chapter. And it just gets more and more interesting as we go on, and we'll do that in future weeks. Um, so I think we'll stop now. Ordinarily, well, I think we have enough people to do breakout rooms, so we'll do that. We'll go into breakout rooms, and then oh, I haven't raised any questions. I think the chapter itself raises questions. It raises questions about well, the device that Vimalakirti is using. You could question whether that's really ethical or not, and you could also raise questions about this notion that disparaging the body is an important part of Buddhist practice, as it certainly part of the literature. And what do you think about that? So we'll get back after the breakout rooms. Thank you so much for being here today on this rescheduled time slot, and I'll see you shortly.